Hello there, it's Carly with another episode of the Expat Focus podcast. We cover all aspects of life abroad on this show, so if there's a topic you'd love to hear about, you can let us know on social media, we're Expat Focus, or simply use the contact details on our website, which is expatfocus.com. If you're scrolling through our past episodes, let me make some recommendations for you. Emma O'Neill Sandham, who talks through the process of applying for an Australian partner visa. It's not for the faint-hearted. There's the episode with Mario Cacciatolo, who shares his tips for enjoying expat life in Malta. And if Portugal is on your moving list, then tune into my chat with James Cave, who goes through 7 things that expats should know before moving there. Now, tax expert Oliver Heslop from Global Expatriate Tax Services is back today, and he's going to give us an update on UK and EU pension rights after Brexit. It's very good news for the million-plus Brits living in EU countries and the more than 3 million EU citizens who call the UK home. Oliver's also going to touch on what you should keep in mind this tax season if you have relocated, and the potential tax implications of everyone working from home and possibly from a different country in 2020. Last time we spoke, Oliver, we were approaching the end of 2020. Brexit was looming. Brits, with their hearts set on moving to the EU, were deciding whether to make a last-minute dash amid the ongoing pandemic stress and border closures. Now that we're in 2021, give me a status update, Oliver, on all things Brexit, post-Brexit, I should say.
You're not going to do that to me. No, Brexit-wise, we are finding we're doing case-by-case basis. British people calling up from Italy and Spain, and we're just having to work it out as we go because the countries don't know. What I mean by that is I've got British people trying to go out to Spain at the moment, and we just don't know what some of the laws are. So, we're sorting it all out, but it's still very new.
Now, the government did sign an 11th hour agreement with the EU, which provided answers to a lot of questions.
I mean, you wouldn't notice it if you weren't in the tax industry, but we were really worried during the autumn and winter. We thought, how on earth are they going to sort out all the social security and pension stuff? And it's not very interesting to read about in the newspaper, but if you're retirement age, I mean, it is absolutely critical. And they sorted lots of it out, did it all at Christmas before the Brexit deadline. Yeah.
Yeah, you were saying to me just before we started recording that you're actually quite impressed with how grown up both parties have been and how good the pension deal is. So tell me a little bit about what the deal is with pensions of Brits who are living in Europe now that the UK is not part of the European Union.
Sure. What's interesting about it, remember we talked about the big rush before Christmas and people to get out there, and they were doing that. Brits were moving to Spain and France and other places to guarantee rights as EU citizens because we all believed that post-January it wouldn't be the same and there wouldn't be protections. There'd be all sorts of immigration and pension problems. That drove the rush. And hey ho, we're here now, and a deal was struck on Christmas Eve that protected what I'd call the new people, people who are moving in early 2021. Well, from now on, have got generous pension rights. And all I can say, in an absolute nutshell, this is saying that if you retire abroad in the EU, you can get a UK state pension, and it'll keep going up with inflation. And I have to, that's amazing, because that was by no means guaranteed. That's really they've really come together and come up with a sensible agreement.
Does it go the other way too, Oliver, if you're a European citizen retiring in the UK?
It does, yes. We've honoured that as well, and I think probably easier for us to do it. Well, we're just one nation, aren't we? So we could have said yes or no. We were so worried, I think, that the bloc of 27 EU countries would not approve it or accept it. But yes, sorry, to answer your question, Europeans settling here, there's a few complexities to it, but the long and short of it is that a European retiring an EU citizen retiring in the UK can have a UK state pension and also draw their state pension from their home country. That's where it gets complicated, but the headline to take away is that EU and UK have respected each other's rights and come to a good accommodation.
So, what about younger expats, such as myself in my mid 30s or those a little bit older that have moved to a European country and are still actively working in that system? For example, say you've built up some pension rights in the UK, but now you are resident in Spain, working in Spain, where you're under Spanish Social Security as you work. What happens to you at retirement?
Great question. If we were talking 3 months ago, I would have said you're very well looked after and you will work out the pension. And now in 2021, under the new rules, it's just the same. So what that means, the exact thing you just gave me was you would build up some, I'm going to say points. They're actually called contribution years, but you pay a few years in the UK. That counts towards a state pension, a UK one potentially, and then you do some years in Spain, that counts as well. And then you have to sit down and look at the national laws. You would add those two together, and you may end up with a mixture of a British and a Spanish pension. You may just get one in one country, but both blocks are respecting each other and saying we will sit down when this person's 60 and we will recognise where payments were made in both places. So that's great. It's a long way off, isn't it, for a 30-year-old? But it'll be really important in 20 years' time. Yeah.
For sure. And I'm wondering, Oliver, you said, that this agreement turned out better than expected and everything looks pretty rosy. But are there any elements of Brits and EU citizens' rights in their respective countries post-Brexit that are still being nutted out?
There are some glitches at the moment because we don't know what forms to use. And I know what a nerdy thing to say, but if it's your bread and butter, the laws are agreed and okay, but we don't know how to do it yet. That's the thing. But for a client, it's fine because we'll sort it out. For a tax professional, we're still trying to sort it out. But things are moving very rapidly, and every week people are coming with new ideas and processes. So it's moving fast, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Carly, there is another challenge in our jobs at the moment in terms of pensions. It's probably not really I keep on thinking it's a Brexit thing, but it's not. It's a COVID thing. And when we are dealing with the UK authorities, HMRC, the pensions team, they are completely flat out. They haven't got enough staff, and it's causing real problems at the moment. And I refuse to criticise the HMRC staff because they're good, hardworking team, but it's just disastrous to get anything done, and it's a real problem. It's a real problem. So that's really a staff in COVID, isn't it? That's the problem there.
What is the pressure they're feeling right now? Because I know, for example, anyone that has a business selling goods and services between the UK and EU has really been hit for six with the new VAT rules
Yes.
from the 1st of January. And I know there is a bit of confusion with HMRC and other tax officers about when to have to pay customs charges and when not to.
Yes. Yeah.
But what else are they dealing with?
I think with the HMRC people, I just think there aren't enough of them. It's funny, really. In private industry, in big public PLCs, I think they're keeping much more of their workforce working. I don't know how they're organising, lots of working from home. But when you speak to HMRC people, they're on shorter hours generally. And I think that they are more cautious and they send more people off and protect them. They call it shielding, don't they? That's the UK phrase, whereby people aren't allowed to work. They have to protect themselves, and they are just short of people, I think. But then in terms of what they're struggling with technically and process-wise, it is a problem. Is that VAT, and there's a huge problem with Northern Ireland at the moment because Northern Ireland is treated as if it's still in the EU for certain trading purposes, and I think that territory is struggling. They're bound to be at the moment because they've got the open border with the south, and yet they've got different laws there. So yeah, it's working itself through, isn't it?
Definitely need to be nice to your HMRC person if you're talking to them on the phone.
Yes, I can't say on the podcast what tricks I use, but yes, I'm definitely very nice. It makes such a difference.
You're sending them chocolate, aren't you, Oliver?
Yeah, yeah. Well, some people, my clients, are I've just rung the revenue, and they were, and I told them what I thought of them, and then of course, why would you help somebody like that when you're stressed out and understaffed? So yeah, it really pays to just be open, really. Anyway, if anybody is out there calling the revenue this week, yeah, just be polite and patient, and it really works. Yeah.
Oliver, it is tax season at the moment. And I know there's going to be a lot of expats that are sorting out their residency right now in their new country and closing down affairs in the UK or in the European country that they've moved from. So, is there anything to keep in mind when you're doing declarations this year and trying to tie up a few life loose ends?
Well, the types of questions that we're now asking have changed a bit. So I would say I had a few people actually around December who said, Oliver, I don't want you to do all the tax return and all the disclosures. Can you just send me a crib sheet? So that's a really good thing to do. Approach a tax advisor like me or somebody else and just say, what are the hot topics? What are the new things at the moment? Yeah, the focus has changed slightly. The rules on immigration in Italy, for example, have changed slightly, and Brits who are over there are very established and they can be settled as EU nationals, but they're restricted in terms of travel under the new 2021 rules. So anything like that about residence, immigration or tax-wise, I just fire somebody like me and know. You can always say, Oliver, I'm not hiring you to do the whole thing, but can you just tell me what's the headlines, what are the hot topics? Because every country's got them at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of expats in a situation where the country they're normally domiciled in, registered for tax purposes, may not be where they've been working from for possibly the majority of the past tax year.
Totally, yeah, that's been a big row. That's been a really big row, isn't it? Because countries are trying to get their share of it. Oh yeah, the big case in the USA is Massachusetts versus New Hampshire, whereby people are saying, "Hang on a second, you are sitting in New Hampshire all day and working, and we know your employers in the other states, but New Hampshire saying we want the tax because you're sitting here and working." It's a big to do. I think it's going to the Supreme Court. So, exactly what you say, Carly, a lot of people are dislocated, aren't they, in different places at the moment.
I was going to ask is if tax authorities are being a little bit lenient about that, considering we're in the middle of a global pandemic. But if you mentioned that they're going to court over it, then possibly not.
That's just New Hampshire for you. Yeah. Perhaps they're a bit more litigious. No, I think HMRC are fairly good. They've introduced some really good COVID-related stuff. Just very briefly, it's for people who have been stuck in the UK and spent more days than they hoped. There are concessions on that. It's called exceptional circumstances. So they introduced that and a number of other COVID-friendly rules. Yes, so they have definitely tried. It actually, because the COVID has gone on so long, people are still getting caught and bitten for tax. But none of us knew, did we? We didn't know it would run for a year or two, did we?
It's more positive now that we have a vaccine happening and looks
Well,
like
totally.
we
I
have
feel the
some light at
same.
the end of the tunnel.
I feel really positive about it, but it will have a big effect on the 2020 taxes, won't it? I rang a few people and then I said, what's your typical? I was asking about 2019 because there's such a time lag, and they're all just saying, "Oh, I've done nothing. Life is terrible," but they were talking about the wrong year. So it's only as we get into summertime that I'll start looking back at 2020, which will be that very strange year, won't it? When people were working, all sorts of, stuck at home or stuck in another country. I had a client that went to Costa Rica and got stuck there for 4 or 5 months because it's a holiday place. It's a long time to be in a place if you're, a London-based IT or city worker. It's very highly inconvenient. So funny, really.
Oliver, we're seeing a lot of companies changing their work policies to remote working. More and more jobs are like advertisements are like, yeah, you can be in the UK anywhere, you can be remote. What implications does that sort of thing have
big, massive implications. It's a really tricky one because if you're an HR team, you're doing your absolute best to update your policies to accommodate new working arrangements, but you won't mention tax enough because it's the person's responsibility. So I would say that's a real potential banana skin. That's really tricky. So if anybody's listening, if you are working in another place, it'll really impact your tax if you suddenly become a home worker. Because it wasn't HSBC have just said 25% of workforce or something are now working from home. They've cancelled, what should I say, they've cancelled their commercial office lettings and people are at home. Well, yeah, that could really affect things, couldn't it? If you're suddenly in a new country or a new city, you're going to be taxed there where you're doing the work. Yeah, and people will not expect that, will they?
I do read sometimes on expat focus forums and Facebook groups of people that don't really realize there is a tax implication to being somewhere other than where you're registered.
I totally agree. I would say every expat, every person that writes to me through Expat Focus, they've all got a really strong grip on what the rules are. But things like that, it's not higher level, is it? But it's just extra detail. It's just too new, isn't it? Unless you are in the business, you just don't know things like that.
Oliver, as always, you're here to help. How do people get in touch with you if they have anything they need clarification on, be it taxes or pensions?
They can email me through Expat Focus or email me through my personal website, through my company, Gets. But Expat Focus is best, please. I've got a tax page there. And my phone number's there as well. And you just as an example, in the last fortnight, I've had loads of people just picking my brains, and they haven't signed up as clients, suddenly been committed to me for 1 or 2 years. We're not doing that stuff. We are definitely a talking shop for these, well, it's just challenges, isn't it? Challenges in this, in the current times.
Always very generous with your time, Oliver. Thank you very much for the chat.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. It was pensions, and I really enjoyed it. So there we go. Yeah,
Something new every day.
yeah, exactly.
That's it for today. You can continue the conversation in our Expat Focus Facebook groups and follow or subscribe to this podcast on your listening app of choice so you never miss an episode. I'll catch you next time.